and welcome to today's edition of Cafe Diversity. As always, I'll be your host, Sarah Nada. Today's show has been brought to you by WCG-TV and Westman Immigrant Services. Today I have two very special ladies with me in the studio. If you could please just introduce yourselves and what your roles are.
I'm Joy Escalera, and I work at Westman Immigrant Services as Family Program Facilitator.
Okay, and?
My name is Lorraine Wright, and I am the Youth and Family Support Worker at Westman Immigrant Services.
Perfect. So you're both here on the show today to talk about a certain part of Westman Immigrant Services, and I believe it's called the Kids Corner. So what is the Kids Corner?
Kids Corner is a space in the building which is used for child care, which we call CNC, or the Care for Newcomer Children.
Okay.
It is, like, maybe not all people would be familiar with the term, but we try to encourage people to use it just because that's how we call it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a space for child care for those who are accessing our service in the building.
Okay, so you said it was CNC, Child Care
for Newcomer
Children. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
see, I need to learn it too. I have no idea what's going on. All right, so how many people work in the Kids Corner area specifically? Because there are lots of employees at Westman Immigrant Services,
yeah.
but for this section, how many people work there?
We have 2 employees that work in the Kids Corner,
Okay.
myself and a child care assistant named Maggie, and we also use a number of volunteers to run our Care for Newcomer Children.
Okay, perfect. So what sort of services do you provide? Obviously it's care for children, but when people are thinking of care for children, do they just like drop their kids off and take off, or do you have like child programs? Like how does that all work?
There's different kind of services that's available for children of newcomers.
Okay.
Like we have this short-term care and long-term care. Short-term care would be care for children for maximum of 4 weeks.
Okay.
And those would be like those who are coming for appointments with their facilitators in the office. So yeah, so we try not to make it drop in. Like we would encourage clients to register ahead of time.
Okay.
And the long term is for those who would need childcare for more than 4 weeks.
Right.
For example, those who are taking English classes, so they can they can use the service. However, it is only for those who are in the building. So if like you can't like leave your kids there and then okay, I'll take my class this morning and then afternoon I'll go shopping.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. We take care of your kids as long as you are in the building for programs or for appointments.
Okay.
But as long as just during the time that you are there for your specific business or
Right, so it's not a drop and go service,
No,
basically. Okay, all right. So we touched on it a little bit, but who can access these services? We know it's people who need to be on site, so either in English classes, taking programming, or are attending classes. But
meeting with facilitators.
Yeah. So is there a certain sort of immigration status, for example, that people need to be before they can access the Kids Corner?
To access the services, they would need to be a client that has permanent residency,
Okay.
landed immigrant, or a refugee status.
Okay.
And it's kind of confusing sometimes because family sometimes consists of a permanent resident, a Canadian citizen, and like whatever status they have, Canadian sometimes. But as Lorraine mentioned, if like for example the person who is accessing the service, like for example mom who is a permanent resident is taking English classes, then regardless what the partner's status is or the child's status, because the child might be born in Canada,
Right.
so the child might be a Canadian citizen, but
Okay.
he or she is still eligible to use the service or the program just because mom is permanent resident.
Okay, so then it would depend on the status of the person wanting to use the service.
Yeah, because it's like a support to the adult who's
Right.
accessing the service at Westman.
So if mom was a permanent resident, and we'll use mom for an example, and she was taking English classes but not at Westman Immigrant Services, just because she's a permanent resident doesn't mean, right? She can use that because she's not on site.
She's not on site, that's right.
Okay. Interesting. All these little tricky rules and things that people need to be aware of, which is confusing sometimes. There's all these sorts of different statuses, and one day you're this and the next day you're that.
Yeah.
All right. So what is the history of the Kids Corner? Has Westman Immigrant Services always had a child care facility, or is this something new, or how does that go?
It is actually fairly new.
Okay.
Even the it is under the family program, and family program is fairly new at Westman Immigrant Services.
Okay.
But Kids Corner in particular started in September when you started.
Ooh, so it's really new.
We've started early last year, but it's more of like a volunteer run because we did not have
more
like
official
really
now?
Yeah, so it became official when Lorraine came in, and yeah, so we thought that it is good support for parents who are coming in for services, because most of the time we see families with their young kids in appointments, or it becomes a barrier to them to attend programming or even English classes. So I guess that's reason why we have Kids Corner right now.
That's good, yeah. Everyone knows trying to take your kids to an appointment is like the worst possible thing ever, because they never want to sit still. Kids don't ever want to sit still.
And you don't want the kids to hear these things that you will be talking about with the facilitator.
Yeah.
It could be an adult topic that you don't want the kids
Not
to
for
hear.
young ears. Go over there. Perfect. So what's the cost to use the service? I attend English classes. I need someone to look after my son. How much is it going to cost me to put them in the Kids Corner?
The cost to our clients is free. There is no charge associated with it. They just need to be of that criteria and our client at Westman Immigrant Services.
Free.
They have to bring their snacks though.
Yeah.
Basically free.
Yeah.
Snacks not included. That's really great though, and as you're talking about trying to remove barriers, that's definitely going in that direction for people. That's awesome. So we know Westman Immigrant Services, we know they're downtown, they have classes almost all day and in the evening, but what are the Kids Corner hours of operation? If I'm taking evening classes at Westman, can I use the Kids Corner? How does that work?
Right now, our hours are mostly in the daytime.
Okay.
And we're offering the program for English classes only from 11:15 until 2:15.
Oh, okay.
Sort of as a pilot project right now. And then if there is a program going on for parents or people have a settlement appointment, they would book it accordingly.
Okay.
And we would be available for that.
Okay, but at this point in time, you're not open for the evenings then? It's just regular business hours, I guess, kind of times.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Don't want to work in the evening either, so I agree with that. So we've talked a little bit about the Kids Corner, why it's created, who can use it. What's a normal, I use that term very broadly. I know with
The
children,
usual.
nothing's normal. What's a relatively normal day like in the Kids Corner?
Okay, the parents and children would arrive about 15 minutes before their scheduled appointment or class.
Okay.
And the children come in and we greet them just like in any childcare setting. And they come on in and they can have free play, and we do art and science, all kinds of things
Interesting stuff.
all kinds of things to stimulate the 5 domains of development.
Good. So I have almost a trick question for you. I apologize. But the clients at Westman Immigrant Services, not all of them speak English. And if they do speak English, not very much of it. So it only stands to reason that their children will either not speak English or not very much English. How do you cope with that if the children need to use the washroom or they're hungry or something like that? Lorraine, what do you guys have set up for that?
We're fairly lucky that between me and the childcare assistant, we speak Spanish and Chinese.
Ooh, good.
So we have those ones covered. In the case if we don't speak their language, we have posters and cards that would have a picture of a washroom or eating and drinking, so that if the child needs to express a need or want, they can just touch the picture.
Okay.
And we're also lucky at Westman Immigrant Services that we do have access to language assistance if needed.
Right. So you would just get the parents then to explain to the children before they finish dropping them off that if they need to drink or something, they point at that picture?
Yes.
Perfect. It's a really good idea. Pictures are generally universal, so that's definitely very helpful.
Her actions, maybe,
yes.
sometimes, most of the time.
The potty dance,
yeah.
right? The universal potty dance, everybody knows that. So we know that the clients don't have to pay to use this service, but it's not free to have the service. I mean, you cost money, and Maggie, the other worker, I'm sure she costs money. So how do we pay for all of this if we're not charging, you know, for so many hours, pay $5 or whatever? How does this get paid for?
There's a lot of people involved in like really creating that space and also paying for the staff. Like CIC is our Citizenship Immigration Canada is our major sponsor for that, like funder for our CNC program. So they are paying our staff. And for the space itself, it's more of a community project. Like we've got dollars from individuals from Rona, Highmark Construction. We have JM Construction too. We had Brandon Rotary Club and Brandon Healthy Families team.
Oh, wow.
And Christie's is also giving us some supplies for the program. So it's really a community project. That's why we're really proud of it.
Definitely. Perfect. So how many people do you usually have working at one time, and is there a limit on how many children you can have at one time?
We always have 2 adults working in the room, no matter the number of children, but we could have more people in the room depending on the amount of children, the numbers of children, and the ages of the children also affects our adult to child ratio. And in that case, we would use our volunteers.
Okay. What's the age range of children that you can take at the Kids Corner?
Right now, the ages that we take are 19 months up to 12 years.
Okay. No little babies.
No.
It's a bit more complicated, I think, the rules, right, for having infants and stuff like
Yeah,
that?
it lowers the ratios of babies and carers, and we are not we're not licensed daycare, but we are being regulated by CMAS. It's a private institution that was contracted by CIC to support settlement offices that provide CNC. So CMAS has their set of requirements, and one of the requirements is set to make sure that the ratios are being met all the time.
Yes.
And that's why we can't just take all the kids.
Just bring me everybody. It'll be fun.
But I think for the space itself, we have a maximum of 10 kids, regardless of their ages. So,
Is that manageable, Lorraine? I'll look to you for this. Is that manageable? Is it a lot?
It is manageable.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Are the kids really loud? Can you hear them throughout the rest of the building?
Sometimes.
Maybe depends on who's in there and what kind of a mood they're in.
And what activities
No
are taking place.
soundproofing. Maybe if you guys are looking for an update, maybe that might be.
I think there's like one wall there behind the facilitator's room that says soundproof. They said, but I don't think it's really working that well. But you just have to get used to the sound.
Yeah, I think most people are very accommodating. They know that children are going to be loud, whether you like it or not. I'm a mom, and I know the both of you are moms, so we're pretty okay with that.
Yeah.
It's just a fact of life, right? Okay, so we've talked about who can use the service. It has to be permanent residents, refugees, or landed immigrants, right? You get your funding from CIC and a lot of community sponsors as well. And we talked a little bit on the process of how to access the service. You prefer people to register, you don't just want drop-ins. What is the registration process? Like if I have an appointment on Wednesday, do I come in on Tuesday? Do I come in Wednesday morning? What's your preference for that?
You would usually register at the same time as you make your appointment.
Okay.
So for example, I phoned today, I want an appointment with a facilitator, then I would, usually you would be asked if you need child care, and then you would have to register that same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is that is if you're that is if you're already registered, but the registration, it's tricky because it depends on how long you need the service.
Okay.
So maybe you can talk about the long-term and short-term registrations?
Sure.
If it was for short-term care, as in they had an appointment with a facilitator, they would just need to fill in a registration form and bring their Manitoba health card.
Okay.
And then we could schedule them in. If it's long-term care, and then we would be seeing those children every day on a long-term basis, they would fill out the same registration form with added questions so we would know more about the child.
Okay.
And at that same time, the parents would get an orientation to our building and our space and the programming that their children would be experiencing when in our care.
Perfect. Okay. You guys really thought this out. Bunch of smart people that I have on set today.
You can say that.
I'll say it. I'll say it. It'll be fine. So why do you think it's important to have the Kids Corner? I mean, Westman Immigrant Services has been around for a very long time. And you mentioned before that it sort of exists early last year. You're using a lot of volunteers to run it. Now we've got Lorraine, who's been working, I think you said since September and almost a year now. So why did Westman Immigrant Services feel that having an on-site childcare facility, why is that important for them?
Well, I think it's just breaking the barriers to access the service. Like, we've heard parents or newcomers saying that they can't attend their appointments, or they miss their appointments,
Right.
or they don't go to English classes and programming just because they don't have people to take care of their kids.
Right.
And most of the time for our newcomers, childcare is new to them. They don't just leave their kids to whoever, like to a center. It's usually family, but they don't have the family here.
Right.
So it's also like CNC is different from the typical childcare because it's not just caring for the kids, but caring for these newcomer kids who have special needs. And that's part of it is settlement. So we help them orient them, or maybe just give them an experience on how it is in a real daycare or childcare center. And
Yeah, because I mean, it would be very strange. You come to a strange country, strange people talking in a strange language, and now I have to leave my kids with strangers. Like, what's going on here? I mean, trust me, I wish I could leave my kids with their parents, their grandparents all the time, but Canada, everybody has to work until they're dead, so that's probably not going to happen for a long time. Okay, so do you find it easy or difficult to find enough people to help you look after the children? Now we've got yourself, Lorraine, we've got Maggie, and you said you have volunteers, but I know some people, they want to volunteer and then they can't commit for the entire time, or maybe their eligibility times is only short. How do you work on keeping those volunteers and getting those volunteers? Who deals with that?
we work closely with our volunteer coordinator at Westman Immigrant Services, and she's really good. Her name is Megan, and she's really good at finding volunteers for us. But that's true. Like, it's hard to commit because it's almost every day that we need volunteer or like a child care support worker.
Right.
And I think CIC knew that. That's why we just had approved position for another 20-hour person to work with us.
Good. Great.
So that would make it easier for us, I hope.
Fingers crossed.
So
fingers
yeah,
crossed.
we're in the process of hiring that person.
Okay, so then you'll have 3 people there, right? Lorraine, Maggie, and
whoever is
the mystery
lucky person.
The mystery person. I like it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this mystery person can speak, I don't know,
a different
language. Get Hindi maybe, so you can access that and get that all organized. I think you guys planned it like that on purpose. This is my thought. Okay, so we know where the Westman Immigrant Services building is. It's in the old CP Rail building, and the Kids Corner, I've seen it. It's fabulous. It's really nice. Do you guys have any future plans for the Kids Corner?
I think I've already mentioned the staff, the additional staff.
Yeah, other than additional staff, but.
Yeah. Well, with the additional staff, we're thinking of we're looking at offering it to more programs. Like for now, we're very limited just because we don't have enough staff. So we're hoping that with that additional staff, we'll have more opportunity to really open it on a daily basis.
Okay.
That we can't do it right now.
Right, maybe even target those evening classes, possibly.
Maybe.
We'll see.
But
Depends on if Lorraine wants to work in the evenings, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you ever think in your dream world, if everything is perfect, would you ever have the kids' corner in its own building in a bigger room?
If we have money.
If you have money, anything's possible, right? Do you think it could possibly happen maybe sometime in the
There's
future?
a need, I'd say.
Okay.
But the resources were kind of limited.
They're limited right now.
Yeah, but for now we're happy with what we have. Not all agencies, I guess, would have that. Yeah,
it's very
service. So.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, those are all the questions I have for you ladies today. Is there anything that you would like to add? I know our time has come. We must end. Do you have anything you'd like to add at all? Or you're good.
We're having this open house on the 28th. I know I would just invite people to come and see our facility, meet our staff.
Great. Yeah, so it's happening May 28th, which is next Thursday, right? And I believe the time is from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m.
10
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
That's
so
right.
People can come for a nice fun tour and maybe see Lorraine in action, chasing children around and hopefully getting them to listen. All right, perfect. All right, well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. It was really great to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, that's been our show for today. I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in to today's episode of Cafe Diversity. As always, I'm your host, Sarah Nada, and today's show was brought to you by WCG TV and Westman Immigrant Services. Thanks for watching and have a great day.